Welcome to our first attempt at the usage of Google Hangout. Now, before I start, let me thank Namit for having made this happen. One of the most important things in life is how do you deal with change? And if you are in a leadership position, how do you drive change? So therefore, fundamentally, as an individual, as a professional, you have to get very accustomed to change. And the first thing that you're going to see today is that as against the plan of doing finance for non-finance managers delivered by a non-finance person, the topic has been changed to business concept innovation. I still hope that you will enjoy this session. So let me quickly get down to some of the slides that we have here so that things will become very, very clear to you. So now when it comes to change, firstly, you have to understand what is changing. You have to understand the rate of change, and you should think in terms of how you can exploit that change. Look at what was happening in the past and take a look at what is happening today and try to imagine how 2020 will be. See, yesterday natural resources defined power. Today knowledge is power. Yesterday hierarchy was the model. Today synergy is the mandate. Yesterday leaders commanded and controlled. Today leaders empower and coach. Yesterday employees took orders. Today teams make decisions. Yesterday seniority signified status. Today creativity drives status. You see how the world has changed. And in 2020, it is going to become even more complex. Probably a scenario that any one of us today might find it even very difficult to imagine. And in all probability, it is something that we may not even like to hear. Look at the reality. There is going to be a huge workforce that is 25 years old in 2020. Now, these are the internet kids. So they have been using the internet at the age of 5. At the age of 10, they were using handheld devices, mobile devices. At the age of 15, they were using the Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. Now, the whole mindset of these children who are now in the workforce is completely different from what any of us would have. 1 minute. It will do full screen for the PPT. Okay. Thank you. How do you learn what is required to make you successful in the year 2020 is an extremely important aspect of your professional planning and growth. Let us come back to this concept of how do we innovate on a business. If you want to innovate on a business concept, you should first of all understand what is a business model. Now, irrespective of what the business is, the business model remains the same. There has to be a core strategy. Excuse me. There has to be strategic resources. There has to be a customer interface, and there has to be a value network. These are the 4 fundamental concepts of any business model. Then there are the bridge components. Now, between the core strategy and the strategic resources, what we are actually doing is that we are defining the configuration of the company. Now, between the core strategy and the customer interface, we are actually defining what will be the customer benefits from this company. And between the strategic resources and the value network, we are defining what are the company boundaries, what we will do, what we will not do. Now, underpinning all these 4 components and the bridge components is the most important thing, which is like let's say, the punchline. Is this a business that operates efficiently? Is this a business that is unique in some regard? Is there a proper fit across the various components? Is there some profit booster in the business? Now, if a business does not make money, it is like a comedian without a punchline. And that is why the bottom line is extremely critical. Okay.
And you do the full, just make it full screen once more.
Okay.
And go to the slide.
Full screen once again. Then Alt tab. Okay.
And you can do screen share once more, only for the full screen part.
Screen share
Show the full screen
once more. This one.
Third one.
Okay.
Now you can do the screen share.
That's okay. Namit, I can just continue now? Yes, Namit. Namit. I can just deliver. I can deliver now. Oh. Okay.
While stopping, you can use the mute button on that screen. If you go back to that.
Oh, you have to again go back.
This is the primary screen, so you can always stop videos if you want. Now, if you want to take a break or something.
I can see and hear you.
Now let's look at each of these individual components. The core strategy. Now the core strategy is where you define your vision, your mission, your goals. Why are you actually starting this company? Now, if you have a why, you can always invent a how, you can always live with a what. So the most important thing is the why. And that's where the vision and mission clearly comes in. If you take Paramount, for example, our vision that we have defined is very, very clear. Mounting value for all our stakeholders year on year through customer insight, industry foresight, collaboration, and execution excellence. So there are 4 components that drives our vision. The mission is where we clearly define how will this company look in the year 2015 or in the year 2016. A 3 to 4 year time frame is good for, let's say, a business in the IT industry. It's very, very difficult to have a 10-year vision in an industry that is so dynamic, where technology becomes obsolete. There are a tremendous amount of challenges as far as the environment is concerned. So it's always better to have a 3 to 4 year kind of vision. Sorry, mission statement. Then you have your product and services and market. What is the scope? What is the portfolio that you're going to carry? What kind of services you will render, and what kind of markets you will address? And the most important aspect of the core strategy is what is your competitor differentiation? Some of you might recall that there was a concept called core competency that was defined several years ago. In management parlance, it was at that time one of the most sought after words, core competency. But I don't know how many of you really understand what core competency really means. A competency can be considered as core, provided it satisfies 3 criteria. Criteria number 1, there must be competitor differentiation. Criteria number 2, there must be customer value. And criteria number 3 is that it must be extendable across multiple businesses. Take the case of leadership. Now, if you can lead an organization in the construction business, and you tell yourself that I can also lead a company in the IT business, then leadership for you is core competency. You see the importance of that meaning? Now, once you have your core strategy clearly defined, the next thing is to look at strategic resources. But before we look at strategic resources, one of the things that you could look back is some of these strategic moves made by organizations that change the world. See, between 1994 and 1999, the number of mobile phones sold in the world jumped from almost 360,000 to almost 3.6 million. Now, during that time, the technology changed from analog to digital. Now, Motorola, the world leader in the cellular telecom business until 1995, missed that technological shift by approximately 1 year. In that sliver of time, Nokia, a hitherto unknown company perched on the edge of the Arctic Circle, became the new world #1. All of a sudden, it was the darling of the investor community and the fastest growing high-tech company in Europe. And now, in the last 3-4 years, we have seen how Nokia has been simply removed from the pedestal at which it was placed, and how Apple and Samsung are ruling the mobile world. And that is because the original mobile changed from simply using it as a phone to smartphones or smart devices, or with extensive camera capabilities. Starbucks. This is another very, very interesting concept that emerged in the US, where at one point in time, nobody would have imagined that people would stand in a queue and pay $3 for a latte. At that point in time, Nescafe was the world leader in coffee. Now, what do you think were the marketeers based in Vevey, Switzerland, which is the headquarters of Nescafe? What do you think they were thinking about? They were thinking about what kind of cans to be put in the supermarket shelves, what should be the color and shape of those cans. This was what they were worried about. They never saw Starbucks as a potential competitor. And today, the biggest selling coffee company in the world is Starbucks. The government of Dubai is another case in point. I mean, personally for me, I've seen how Dubai has grown over the last 15 years. And it's a tremendous example of very strong, imaginative political leadership coupled with execution excellence. And that has transformed this desert into an oasis of prosperity. So starting resource position is really irrelevant, unimportant when it comes to setting up an organization. An opening batsman on the first day of a test match in the game of cricket has the mental disposition of an entrepreneur about to start a new commercial venture. He does not know how many runs he has to hit in order to win that match. A middle order batsman on the last day of a test match with a huge score to reach has a completely different mental disposition. But the game is still cricket. And batting continues to be the only source of accomplishment. And this is a reason why we say that if a salesman stops selling, the company stops breathing. Whatever be the implications, whatever be the external or internal situation, a sales guy has to sell. There was a time when, as a family, we used to go to Almaya Lal's or Choitra to buy the monthly provisions, the food, the eggs, and whatnot. Today, none of us go to Almaya Lal's or Choitra, and we don't even know whether it exists somewhere in Dubai. The market today is ruled by Carrefour and by Lulu. That is because when the concept changed from supermarket to hypermarkets, Almaya Lal's and Choitram were caught on the back foot. And that is how Majid Al Futtaim, until then who was really only in the automotive and electronics business, became very successful despite the fact that he did not know anything about the hypermarket or supermarket business at that point in time. So again, I repeat what I'm saying, the starting resource position is really irrelevant as far as the long-term success of the organization is concerned. For that matter, it is also irrelevant as far as the starting position of a professional is concerned in his career. See, if both of us, let's say, have gone to a management institute, at the point in time when we are graduating, in financial terms, the net present value of our education is the same. However, what happens is that 15 years later, both of us are in a completely different position. Our net present value or our net worth at that point in time can be totally different. There could be a huge skew. And the reason why that happens is what you really need to understand. And that is, the value is not in the education per se. The value is in the application of your education. There is this old saying about, all of us look at the same thing. All of us look at the same thing, but we see it differently. Those of us who see the same thing understand it differently. Those of us who understand the same thing apply it differently. So the key is not in the looking, the key is not in the understanding, the key is in the application. Now let's look at the second component, which is the strategic resources. Now the strategic resources is where we are defining what are our core competencies, what are our strategic assets, and what are our core processes. So the input is the product and services. Those products and services have to be put through a process, the pre-sale process, the post-sale process, and then you will get your output. So defining strategic resources, therefore, is a very, very critical component of building the business. And as I mentioned before, between the core strategy and the strategic resources is where we are defining the configuration of the company. What kind of organizational structure, which are the various departments, how do these various departments interact with each other, and that's the organizational structure or the configuration. Now let's look at the customer interface. Customer interface is the component where we define fulfillment and support. How do we fulfill a customer order? How do we provide ongoing support to the customer? What kind of information will we give the customer? What kind of insight on the customer we will build? What is our pricing structure? What are the relationship dynamics? This has to be clearly defined. The bridge component is how do you define the customer benefits? Because unless you have a very, very compelling customer value proposition, the customer will not do business with you. And that is why sales and pre-sales people who interface with the customer must always think in terms of what is your personal value add, what is your company's value add. And this will change from customer to customer. Because you might meet a customer whose intelligence level, whose understanding may be far superior to yours. So for that kind of a customer, your knowledge really is not of any significant value add. There is something else that you have to think in terms of how value can be added for that customer. And I would say the easiest part of it is to ask the customer what constitutes value for him. Now, the value network that any organization has is basically the constituency of suppliers, the constituency of partners, the constituency of coalitions. And when you decide on your suppliers, partners, and coalitions, you are indirectly defining what are the company boundaries. This is what you will do, this is not what you will do. And what you will not do, you will partner. You may not be in manufacturing, but you will buy the manufactured products from a vendor. You may not do implementation of software, but you will tie up with a partner and give him the responsibility of implementing the software. So this is what the value network really is all about. And sometimes you will find that every one of these four components has got a significant role to play in the success or failure of the organization. Core strategy is very important. The strategic resources you're able to assemble is very important. How you define the customer interface is very important. And how strong is your value network, again, is very important. Now, In the business that you are creating, you have to seriously look at, are you delivering something with a high degree of efficiency? Is there something unique about your business? Is there a very strong fit across the various components? And is there some profit booster? I will give you an example of a profit booster, because this is a word that generally doesn't come into the dictionary most of the time. If you look at the software industry, the R&D cost to a large extent is amortized when the software license revenue is generated by the company. However, if you look at any piece of software, there is a component called annual maintenance charge or renewal, for which, strictly speaking, there is very, very limited amount of effort required on the part of the customer. I'm sorry, on the part of the owner of the software. That line item is a profit booster. So just imagine that you have a huge client base, and if that client base is delivering, say, even $1 to you by way of annual maintenance, that could turn out to be significantly high revenue for you. And that is why today you even have concepts like crowdsourcing. You want to generate $100 million, let's say, to start a business. You go onto the internet, you put up your idea and tell people that all that I want from you is $1. Now, because you are able to reach, today I think the whole internet population must be about 2 billion people. If you're able to reach out to 2 billion people, you need only 100,000 people to put $1. And you have a business up and running. So you understand the strength of crowdsourcing. Today, there are organizations that are focused entirely on corporate social responsibility only, that generates funds through crowdsourcing. The other important aspect when you decide on your products and services is, first of all, do you have a portfolio breadth? Can you sell your products and services in multiple countries? Do you have products from a large number of vendors? What kind of competencies do you have in-house? And what are the different customer verticals in which you can sell into? So this portfolio breadth, to a large extent, will determine the kind of revenue that you can reach. Operating agility. How can you refocus when demand changes? Do you have implant possibilities? If you look at the travel agency business today in large organizations, there is a travel agency's implant inside the organization. So what happens is that when you want to fly from one place to another, you want to book a ticket, all that you will do is to send an email to the implant, and that implant will actually do the booking for you. And that is what is meant by operating agility. A lower break-even point. Do you have a high capital? Do you have a high fixed cost? Do you have a large number of debt? A large debt. These are important points that determine whether you have a lower break-even point or not. That is the reason why in the IT industry, this whole concept of fixed compensation and variable compensation comes in. If you take a large organization like Oracle, they tell you, fine, my friend, your salary is $100,000, $50,000 fixed, $50,000 variable. So it's only based on performance. Only then it is a win-win relationship between the employee and the organization. Another thing that has happened in the last decade or so is this whole globalization phenomenon, right? Products can be made anywhere and knowledge can be rendered anywhere. It does not matter where you are sitting. And what we are doing now is an example of that, because you're sitting in your office and you may watch this program live at this point in time, or you may choose to watch this program maybe in the night or maybe 10 days later. And I'm sitting in my office and I'm delivering this program. It's a wonderful way, I think, to teach. It's a wonderful way to learn. At every stage in the life of the organization, it is worthwhile for you to adopt the concept of Gartner's magic quadrant, where the 4 quadrants are clearly defined. If you are in quadrant A, you're a niche player. If you are in B, you're a visionary. If you are in D, you are a challenger, and you are a leader only if you are in quadrant C, where in terms of completeness of vision, you are rated very high. In terms of ability to execute, you are rated very high. So evidently, if you are in A, B, or D, you must see what does it take to move into C. So which means we have to have answers to these questions. Do we have the ability to execute on the completeness of our vision? Do we have a strategic plan in place? Is our vision in line with industry and sector trends? Are we capable to lead to a broad installed base? Do we have the financial strength? Do we have the marketing strength? Do we have the right implementation methodology? Now, if we constantly ask ourselves these questions, we will definitely be able to move from any one of the quadrants that we are in to the leaders quadrant. Look at this word innovation. You can innovate on a product or a service. For companies like us, where there is no IP that we are creating or not creating, we can always look at new technologies that are emerging in the American market and then bring it into this market. And that is product innovation. Similarly, you can have service innovation. You have ISO 27001 consulting. You can go and offer ISO 22301 at some point in time. So product innovation and service innovation must be an ongoing process as far as the company is concerned. So that is innovating on products and services. You can innovate on a business process between on-site and off-site. There is a lot of innovation potential in the way in which we support our customers. Between onshore and offshore, there is a huge opportunity for us to innovate on our support processes. And this will have a direct financial implication on the business. We can even innovate on a business model. There are various ways in which, because even today in our industry, you have a vendor, you have a value-added distributor, you have a distributor, you have a system integrator, you have a consulting company. There are so many entities today, and some of them, for instance, the value-added distributor 15 years ago never existed. So that is a business model innovation. And if you extend your mind, I'm sure that you will be able to come out with a new business model altogether. The most difficult part, of course, is how do you change the industry architecture? How do you innovate on the industry architecture? By and large, this comes out of the US, where there's a lot of IP creation happening. Now, one example of industry architecture innovation is the way the music industry has changed as a result of the internet. The way we buy music has completely changed. Today, you listen to music on the internet, you pay on the internet, and that is where the music industry's architecture has been altered significantly. Now, what makes a company successful, or what ensures that a company fails? See, more often than not, when somebody looks at an organization from the outside, when somebody looks at whether he must invest in that company, when somebody looks at whether he should do business with that company, one of the most important things that an informed person looks at is the quality of the leadership. And that is why the leadership and the management bandwidth of the organization is fundamentally important, and it is also important to enhance that management bandwidth going forward. Now, after you have defined your leadership, established the team of leaders, you need to have people. In the knowledge-intensive business, it is absolutely essential to be able to assemble a team of people with mutually exclusive but collectively exhaustive set of knowledge and skills. The individual is the differentiator at the point of customer contact. So your people are the most vital element of the organization. Now, once you have the people in place, there has to be a clear strategy. The vision, mission, goal, strategy is clearly defined. And you have assembled your strategic resources with other partnerships and the resources. This is your input. You have to look at a business just the way you have the old concept of IT. You have an input, you have a process, you have an output. Now, these are the four input components: the leadership, the people, the strategy, the partnership, and resources. Now, if you have this input correctly assembled, you have to put that through a process. You see the enablers. The process is your pre-sale process, your post-sale process, your implementation methodology, project management methodology, the way you run the organization, the MIS reporting, corporate governance, all these are the processes that you define in the organization. And once you have taken the input and put them through these processes, you have to have people results, which is basically your employee satisfaction survey, the customer results, your customer satisfaction survey, your repeat business from existing customers, the speed with which you are able to bring new customers on board. The third is your contribution to society. This is a very, very important aspect of any organization. We have to understand that our success is not simply based on our capabilities. The success to a large extent is based on the environment in which we are, and therefore a contribution to that environment is very, very critical. Apart from these three, the people results, the customer results, and the society results, we have the standard financial results of the organization. What are the key financial ratios? Are you giving sufficient return on shareholder funds? Is there revenue growth in the organization? These are some of the important aspects when it comes to assessing a company financially. So if you put this together, you get the European Foundation for Quality Management, the excellence model. And this is the model that has been adopted by the government of Dubai. My belief is that whether it is a small company, large company, mid-sized company, it really doesn't matter. These building blocks, the 9 building blocks, are fundamentally important to ensuring the success of the organization. And innovation and learning has to be a continuous process for the company. So at this stage, I think you have a reasonably good view of what are the various components of a business model, what are the factors that determine whether an organization succeeds or fails. You have also understood that the bottom line is, how does the company make money? At the same time, you have to remember that whether it be wealth of knowledge or whether it is financial wealth, it brings a tremendous amount of trusteeship in its trade. To discharge this trusteeship in an honorable manner, that's where CSR comes in, is sometimes far more difficult than creating wealth in the first place. So now a quick recap for the business that you are involved in. What is your business mission? What is your product market scope? What is your basis for differentiation? What are your core competencies? What strategic assets do you own? What core processes are critical to you? How do you configure these resources? How do we go to market? What kind of information do we need to serve customers? What is the kind of relationship we want with customers? How do we price our products and services? What is the particular benefit bundle we deliver? How do we integrate with suppliers and partners? What profit boosters can we apply? Answers to these questions, which you ask yourself constantly, in my view, is itself creating a platform from where execution excellence will become a way of life. Now, this has been constructed based on my own personal learnings, and I sincerely believe that you should be in a position to apply, if not the whole thing, at least you should be in a position to apply some of the concepts. And it is not so relevant whether you are a professional working for an organization, or you are an aspiring entrepreneur, or you are an existing entrepreneur wanting to grow your business. I think whatever position you are in, my belief is that there is some value in what I have presented to you today. So thank you very much, and see you again next time. Become a business concept innovator. Transform the life of your business and the business of your life. Thank you very much.
You said thank you and everything. But that is six.
I said thank you.